to dedicate this song to my manager, Dre London. He's from here, and this is...
How did Dre London go from a regular British guy who was trying to make money in the music industry to managing one of the biggest superstars in the world? People in America thought I was crazy too. Here was this black dude with an English accent saying he was going to do this and that. His gamble paid off big time since he's now rolling in a Rolls Royce, living in Beverly Hills, and a multi-millionaire many times over. Dre London's the founder and CEO of London Entertainment, which is a management company that represents artists like Tyga and Post Malone, among others. Dre London was born in London as a British citizen. He was raised by his mother, who was an administrative officer, and his grandmother, who both encouraged him to succeed despite the lack of involvement from an absentee father. He had hoped that his lack of formal schooling in the UK wouldn't be an obstacle to his success in the US, so he moved to America. He said, "I knew I had to get out of there. I had to get to America to be a success, but it took a lot for me to do it." Few people are too aware of him since he always kept himself out of the spotlight while successfully bringing his client into the forefront for everyone to see. After getting kicked out of school, he said he turned into a man and started earning money in any way possible, buying his first home at the age of 21, but when he left the UK in 2008, he did so without having taken a single GCSE examination. He sold all his property in London and put everything on the line in order to make it in the US. In his early days in the United States, he met the knighted businessman Richard Branson and told him, "I hope your magic rubs off on me." He had long dreamed of becoming as successful as him. London had gone back and forth a couple of times from the UK to the US, but after seeing Richard Branson randomly in a club, he decided to permanently move to New York. After evading the pull of London gangs and finding success in the US, he declared, eventually, "I'm living the American dream." Dre London didn't discover Post Malone until 2014 though, but he's largely recognized as being the driving force behind his ascent to stardom. Post Malone's been nominated for 10 Grammys and has singles that are certified diamond, thanks in part to Dre London's work as his manager, and he's been constantly performing in arenas that are always sold out. It could appear as though London's 2018 Manager of the Year award from Variety came effortlessly from the outside looking in. But when we take a look behind the scenes, it becomes clear that he's clever and ambitious, who really took passion in working harder than anyone else and delivering a ton of value to his clients, mainly Post Malone. One of the defining moments of his childhood in Brixton, England, came when he was kicked out of high school. It was a traumatic experience, but he insists that he's now grateful for it because it fueled his desire to succeed. He said in an interview, "The deputy head of the school, Mr. Vickers, made me do all my coursework, everything leading up to my final exams. I did so much work, and at the end, my mom got a letter saying don't come back to the school, and that was it. I remember thinking my life was over. I was a big instigator in the classroom. I might not have been the bad guy, but I would have other kids being bad. Maybe instigator is the best word. But what I got in trouble for actually became a plus for me today. Today I'm instigating the biggest business, the biggest music entertainment. But you can't instigate kids to be bad in class, and that's what I was doing. And I guess the class snitched on me. But thank you, Mr. Vickers, because that helped me to have my back against the wall. When I decided I had to leave for America, my girlfriend at the time said I was crazy, and at the beginning it was tough. In order to get ready for his new life in the States and emulate Sir Richard Branson's success as an entertainment magnate, he said that he had devoted a significant portion of his time to studying management, marketing, and promotion on the internet. In the UK, he was already clever enough to engage the sales personnel at property auction houses and convince them to sell him houses before they were put up to bid for other potential buyers. Sometimes he would sell properties in London at a profit and then reinvest the money to help fund his new life and goals in the US. Nevertheless, when he came to New York, he discovered that things weren't as easy as they seemed. He claimed that people stole his ideas and cut him out of deals that he had influenced, doors that he wanted to go through were closed in his face, and record label executives that he looked up to did not take him serious. New York has the same kind of street toughness as London, but there are so many more hustlers, he would say. He moved to New York City with $100,000, working over the next 4 years, but without a green card, he wasn't earning any money. His love for music and his desire to change hip-hop would bleed him dry. He resigned to his friend's couch for 2 weeks, and he was overwhelmed by his friends from back in the UK insisting that the writing was on the wall and to come back home. I used to play soccer. You gotta look at it through a sports analogy. Yo, you just got a bad tackle? You're not too hurt. Shake it off and go again. I was like, wow, I could go back to England and go back in time, or I can keep pushing on this journey to make sure the next move is gonna be a win. What was I gonna do? Figure it out or sit back and wimp? I wasn't gonna sit back. I needed that couch for 14 days. I don't know how many times I slept on it, but I needed to see it. Those were my most important hours in America. I didn't ever want to ask someone for help, and within 2 or 3 weeks, I figured it out and didn't look back. There's either results or excuses, and there's no middle ground. You gotta pick which side you want to be on. After 5 years of relentless grind in New York, pulling the strings behind early French Montana hits such as New York Minute and Shot Caller, it was his own turn to take things to LA. I got ripped off and people took my ideas and ran with them, and that was heartbreaking. I had all this energy and buzz, and people just wanted to take my ideas. He said his head was turned in 2014 when he met a young Jason Probst who was driving an Aston Martin and living in a huge Beverly Hills mansion. He was funding his lifestyle by playing video games and uploading commentaries to YouTube, as well as streaming. Also living in the same house was Post Malone, or Austin Post, who had just a month before moved from Dallas, Texas, and Dre said he was taken aback by him. Convincing Post Malone to be his manager wasn't easy. He was living in the house and had only moved there the month before from Dallas. I saw talent. For the first time in my life, it wasn't about how much money I needed to spend or how much I could make. I felt it became very passion driven. Dre London had this thing that he felt needed to get him where he needed to be and where he's at today. And he said he had the special spark when he walked into a room. He wasn't trying to be something else. He was only himself. He was in his own lane, his own zone. Nobody knew who he was. He wasn't famous, but he was very talented as a musician. He told Post Malone that he was going to be the biggest thing in the world, one of the biggest rock stars in the world. I started telling everyone and his mother how big he was going to be. So many things aligned at the right time. There was no sound like him. He jumped at the opportunity in managing Post, but the 18-year-old at that point didn't reciprocate the feeling immediately. Over time, an official partnership was confirmed with a handshake and a handful of words from Post. I guess you're my manager now. To which Dre London said, I had to establish first the kind of person I am for Post to want to work with me. And that was from March until September. I nurtured the relationship and showed that I'm a plus, that I add value, and I'm not coming to subtract and be a minus. That's how I got into any relationship. I have to be a plus. I can't be a minus. Post Malone's breakout single, White Iverson, would earn multi-platinum status, and his debut album, Stoney, would move 58,000 in its first week. And since then, Dre London had been adding to his management roster and aligning his company, London Entertainment, with enterprises from a list of different executives such as Diddy, Jay-Z, Pharrell, Ye, Akon, and more. I was very impressed with his story, he says of Richard Branson. I heard he was dyslexic, but any guy that can do what he's done, turning something from nothing, I think is brilliant. What Dre London have done from 2015 to 2022 is nothing short of historic, with his last album going number 2, 12 Karat Toothache, which was slightly a disappointment in comparison to his prior 2 number 1 albums, Beer Bongs and Bentleys and Hollywood's Bleeding, which collectively charted for over 359 weeks. 4 number 1 singles and an era-defining discography, all before turning 27 years old. And while Post Malone reinvents pop stardom, London stays handling the business. On top of spearheading brand campaigns for Post Malone with Bud Light, Crocs, and Mason No. 9 to name a few, he founded the management firm London Entertainment Group, expanding its roster to include the likes of Tyler Yahweh, who signed to Post Malone, and a couple of others who haven't really taken off. Post Malone's Beer Bongs and Bentleys tour in 2018 and 19 was the highest grossing hip-hop tour of that year at $76 million across 55 shows, and his subsequent Runaway tour had to be cut short due to the pandemic, but still managed to rake in $55 million. But by early 2020, Post Malone was burnt out. His pure love for music had been muddied by the unforgiving business. He needed the time and space to reconnect with his purpose, which he found in the serene seclusion of a mountainside in Utah. Dre London didn't object though, and he even has his artists exercise the same agency over their own destinies. I give artists ownership to shape their career, and I'm just there to add on to that. I let them go in the direction that they want, and I'm just a puppeteer. There isn't another Post. I look for that gut feeling when you see a star, but the music has to be right. You have to have this ear to know that this person can last. Look how many TikTok songs have come out. Quick singles. Maybe they've been big, but none of them have been Olivia Rodrigo. And on the subject of TikTok, it can't be ignored that Post took off from SoundCloud with White Iverson. Dre London doesn't really care to dilute the potency of the streaming era, especially because he had a hand in changing the industry standard. In his own words, this is how he sees it. Hip-hop used to just be mixtapes. No one could really measure how many people were really listening to hip-hop. No one in these big corporations knew what we always knew, that hip-hop was the biggest thing in the world. Streaming services like SoundCloud, like Spotify, were the way they finally realized what they were missing. It went from me walking around Queens on Jamaica Avenue and having people selling me mixtapes to YouTube, and then from YouTube to Apple and Spotify. Looking at these streaming services, we can now know trends. We now know what's the hardest thing that people are listening to because everyone's used to the model of paying $10 a month to get all their music. That's what streaming has done. It's changed behavior patterns for the better, and it's also made it impossible for people to deny how big hip-hop is. So, when White Iverson translated into massive exposure and solidified Post Malone as an undeniable talent, he merely saw it as the starting point. The first year I was doing all of this, I was not earning no money. No one will even think about it like that. Managers don't put money in. Managers don't support artists. Most people jump on the bandwagon when artists already have a song, or they've got something that's gone a little viral. No one wants to really actually do the hard work, actually be there from the start, or actually take out their pocket and invest in what they don't know could be in the future. Dre London knew how to trust his gut feeling when he believed he struck gold. He felt it with Post Malone when they met in 2014 while visiting a house in Encino, California, full of young digital creators. London felt it again when working on his own premium tequila, Don Londres, which he launched, saying, "I'd never tasted anything like it before." And it was the same way when I heard Post Malone. I'd never heard anything like it before. Great advertisement for his own product. It had that first time gut feeling of, whoa, am I onto something right here? It can't be just me. Over the years, I've managed to multitask what's important. I have a top 5 and a top 10. The priorities will be number 1, of course. Then there are other things that fall out of the top 10, or there will be a number 10 coming in hot and moving towards number 1. We can listen to 12 Karat Toothache and sip Don Londres at the same time. The timing of Post's album coming out at the same time as my tequila, there's no way I could have planned this. When the stars align, things are meant to happen in the right time, and the stars aligned. Dre London, who came to the US in 2008 and now lives in LA, traveling in private jets, with Post Malone, who he managed from the beginning before White Iverson even released. When he left the UK for New York City, he was considered crazy. His friends and family expected to come crawling back to England before long. But now whenever he goes back, it's managing one of the biggest stars of this modern generation.